How's everybody doing today, and welcome back to a Psyker build guide. We actually haven't had one of these before, and this is the first one with a webcam, so hello for that. Today we're going to go over the Surge Staff Psyker build where you can blow up your enemies in style. I love this build. It's probably one of my favorite, if not my second favorite Psyker build. We're going to go through the weapons, then the Curios, then through the talent tree, and pinned up above right now, as well as in the comment section below, there will be my last live stream that I did right before this video, where we have our gameplay where I played 3 games. One we lost, and we won 2 Maelstrom missions. The first Maelstrom mission was a struggle, and you can see what this build is like when you have teammates that aren't as great at covering hordes while you're playing a Psyker that's not great at clearing hordes as well. And then the last game is a really fun Maelstrom mission where we had teammates that were actually really good at keeping the hordes off you, and you get to see what kind of damage cannon the Psyker can be. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the... Why is that button not working? Oh, I'm not clicked into the game. That would be why. So, we'll hop into the weapons. First of all, we're going to start with our melee weapon here. We have our Psyker here. Our melee weapon is the Assault Chainsword. You could also run, I think it's the Mark IV dueling sword that people really like. I particularly just don't like the playstyle of the dueling sword, and I also think a lot of the melee weapons on the Psyker are either viable or very fun. So you could run the Blaze Force sword as well, is probably really fun. I have a Purg Staff build that I use this Force sword on because I think it's fun to poke things with. It does a lot of single target damage, which the Purg Staff struggles with. But anyways, we get into the Cadia Mark IV Assault Chainsword is what I use for this build, and specifically I'm taking unyielding enemy damage and unarmored enemies. But you could also run... There's a lot of things you could run here. It's what you're dealing with heavy targets that maybe the Purgs or the Surge Staff struggles with. So we're taking unyielding damage. Honestly, Maniac damage is probably better than unyielding damage, and so I take unarmored damage as well just to help you chew through hordes of adds that are coming at you and some of the tankier adds as well. So really I would take Flak and unarmored would be a good combo. You can take Maniac and unarmored. You can take unyielding and Maniac. You can take Maniac and Flak. Honestly, Maniac and Flak sounds pretty enticing. I'm running this right now. It's really what you feel like you're struggling with the most. What you do use the Chainsword is mainly for mutants, and you don't need Maniac damage for really dealing with those mutants, because a lot of time you'll see the mutant coming, you'll do a charged up zap on the mutant with your Surge Staff, and then you'll switch out to the Chainsword, rev it up, dodge, and hit him with a heavy attack, and that should deal... That's pretty much your combo for killing a mutant. You can also just rev up a heavy attack, and you might kill the mutant anyways, because it does quite a lot of damage with the heavy Chainsword attack, especially if the mutant's already taken a little damage from somebody else. He's probably done. Oh, how can I forget? Our most important modifiers for the Chainsword are going to be damage and Shredder. Penetration's also really important. Finesse and mobility are less important. I would definitely want finesse over mobility. As you can see, this Chainsword is really great though, so all of my stats on that are good. But finesse is your crit damage multiplier, so having a higher finesse stat is good if you're going to run this on some kind of build that has a little more crit than ours does. Our build has a lot of crit, but that crit does not carry on to the melee weapon really, I don't think. So then we come to our blessings, and this is a blessing combo that I think is really great for the Chainsword, especially for our use case, which is where we are charging up cleave. So you hit at least 3 enemies, and if you're using this Chainsword, the best way to use it, in my opinion, when you're in a horde, is to just do the heavy attacks. And there also is a combo where you can do a heavy light somehow. Not entirely sure how to do that combo, but I just swing the heavies over and over again. And the heavies are really good horizontal swing. The light attack chains is going to be a lot more vertical. So the heavy attacks, you're going to sweep through the enemies, and you're going to be cutting through a lot of them. And so that is the best way to deal. You'll stack a ton of cleave with that. So you'll hit 3 enemies, you get 180% cleave increase for 2 seconds. That's fantastic. You're going to have cleave for that entire time that horde's there. You're going to be cleaving through all of it. And then on top of that, when you hit at least those 3 enemies, see, these blessings are like made for each other. So on Rampage, you get a damage increase. This one's by 32%. Both of these blessings have level 4 variants. My build is locked, but I just got Rampage 4, which is deal 36% damage for 3 seconds on enemies. So I know Rampage has a level 4. I'm not sure if Savage Sweep has a level 4. If it does, get it. It's better than the level 2, but honestly, or level 3, but honestly, you get 180% cleave versus I think it's 200% cleave for the level 4. Both are fantastic. You're going to cleave through everything you want to cleave through anyways, probably with both of them. So, that brings us through our boy here. You're getting a lot of cleave and a lot of damage on your cleave, so you're able to chew through those hordes of ads that are maybe getting a little too close to you. Then we bring ourselves to the one and only Surge Force Staff. So, most important things to have on the Surge Force Staff is damage, crit bonus, warp resistance. I'll say charge rate is pretty important as well, but I think you can actually get away with having charge rate be your dump stat, to be honest. I have just a fine charge rate, and that plays into our warp flurry as well. However, if you have a really high charge rate, that's going to increase your DPS. It's really good. But I find that on a lot of the characters, you can just spam your least charged attack, and this warp flurry is actually going to build up your charged attack speed as well. I think there might be a warp flurry 4. Obviously, if you've got it, put it on. I don't think I have it. But, oh my goodness, allergies today. So, you want to have a high damage stat. You want to have a high crit bonus stat because we're also running this Warp Nexus, which is give 5 to 20% crit chance based on current peril level, scaling with peril. So higher peril level equals higher crit bonus. And later you'll see in the talent tree we also are running higher peril level is also going to give us more damage overall, up to like 20% I think. So if you're running the Surge Staff at high peril with high peril charge, with high crit chance, you're going to be doing a lot of crits, which you'll see this build does crits quite a lot. Quell speed's just really good because you have to quell a lot, especially if you're playing at high warp. And then you want high warp resistance too, because that's going to build into the way we're building this specific Surge Force Staff. Now we are going for the warp charge path, but there's also methods to go through the empowered psionics path as well. But I don't particularly like to play it that way. I use a lot of the Surge Force Staff, but we're also running Smite, so you could be running Smite with Empowered Psionics would be really good, but we're relying on the Surge Force Staff more than Smite. Smite's really a secondary tool we have in this build in particular, but you could definitely switch it around and have the Surge Staff be your secondary, and you're using Smite a lot to hold the hordes at bay, but this is really more of a specialist killer, targeted, high-value target killing Surge Force Staff. Okay, so our perks, we take plus 25% flak armor damage and plus up, potentially you'd like to have plus 25% carapace armored enemy damage as well. And this allows us to one-shot some enemies that we would have, the flak armor at least does, allows us to one-shot some enemies that we may have some less consistency one-shotting. And this gets us to the breakpoints we need to get to on the flak armored enemies. And then the carapace armored enemies is just 20% more damage because those guys are big and chunky and they take a little while to chew through, so having carapace armored enemies on there also really good. I could potentially see I would definitely take the carapace armor. You could maybe drop the flak armored enemies and take the unarmored damage, or not unarmored, unyielding damage, and that would be really useful, especially against things like bulwarks. That would be really good. That would probably cut down the max attacks it takes to kill a bulwark if you don't hit any crits by 1. So that would be really good. But I like the flak armor because at least when I made this build a while ago, it had some problems one-shotting some flak armored enemies. But now with the talent tree out and the builds that you can run and the damage bonuses you can run into the build, you might not need to take that flak armor damage. But I like the flak armor damage. So then we have Warp Nexus, which is our crit chance, increasing crit chance based on current peril level. Fantastic. And we have Warp Flurry, which is negative 7.5% charge time on change secondary attack. And what you'll see, and I'll show you this in the Psykhanium as well, is that even if you're spamming your charge attack that's kind of a lower level charge attack, it'll still build that up. So your base charge attack will still increase because you whip out your charge attack, you're charging it up, and you fire, and you do that pretty much as fast as you can. You don't want to do it as fast as you can because I don't think it'll actually stack the Warp Flurry, but almost as fast as you can it'll start stacking the Warp Flurry, and every one of your attacks you'll charge up more in that same amount of time. So you're basically ramping up your damage per the same amount of charge attacks. So I don't think the charge rate's really that important, but if you have high charge rate, it'll charge that up faster. And I've seen how fast this thing can charge. If you have 80% charge rate, this thing charges fast. So that would be nice to have. I definitely have space for more perk points on my force staff. So And we'll go over here to the Curios. I'm running a I'm running a 20% health, toughness. I think you can definitely get a better toughness curio than mine. I literally only had this one and I wanted to try it out. I think you definitely want to take one toughness curio and then one wound, because as Psyker it's really easy to blow yourself up, especially depending on which way you run this build. If you're not running the F ability that lets you purge if you accidentally overcharged yourself on peril, you definitely want to be running +1 wound, unless you're really good at the Psyker, in which case I don't know why you're watching my build guide anyways, you're already a god anyways. So, but anyways, we take a health with, I've got max, since this is like my health curio, I took max health plus 5% max health, so we got 25% max health, 20% damage resistance to gunners, because gunners are the worst in this game, and they're honestly probably the only thing that damage resistance helps against. All the other guys are really situational. Gunners are they're all over the place, so taking damage resistance to gunners is great. And then we've got revive speed locked on here. Revive speed's great, not a problem. Toughness, we've got 15% toughness plus 5% toughness, so this is our toughness curio. Then we've got more damage resistance to gunners. Block efficiency. I would honestly take block efficiency or ability cooldown regeneration over revive speed. I would take either of those. Block efficiency is really good because you don't have a lot of stamina as the Psyker, and you don't have great block efficiency. So taking block efficiency is really good. And then +1 wound. I haven't even looked at the perks on this. They need to be adjusted. So damage resistance to gunners, great. Damage resistance to bombers and mutants I wouldn't do that. I would do toughness, ability the ones I just talked about a second ago. Do one of those, toughness, health, and ability cooldown, whatever, and block efficiency are all good options. I wouldn't take the mutant or the bomber resistance or whatever. Okay, so now into the Psyker talent tree. We'll start off with the short side over here. We have replenished 2.5% toughness for every 10% peril generated. This is really good, especially since we're running Smite, so you can really charge up some toughness. It's not a ton of toughness, it's only 2.5% per 10% peril, but it's good to have. It gives you a little bit more. We do have crit hits replenish 5% toughness, and we are running the Smite build with toughness, or with crit chance. Oh, what am I just saying? We're running the Surge Staff with crit chance. Blessings. But I find that that's just a little too inconsistent, and when you really want that toughness regeneration, it's going to be in an emergency, and you're not going to be charging up the Surge Staff to hit crit hits a bunch. So I think the warp expenditure is definitely more valuable here. But what we do have is really good is +3% warp damage for 10 seconds on crit hits. That stacks 5 times, so that's up to a 15% warp damage, so warp attacks, which I believe the Surge Staff would fall under. Gives you a lot of damage bonus. Excuse me. I have a package delivery. Exciting. It's a new pillow. May get some good Z's tonight. Anyways, back on topic. We have +3% warp damage for 10 seconds. Stacks 5 times. You're doing a lot of crits with this build. I average about 900 crits per game, 8 to 900, which is not the most a build I've seen, but it's a lot. And you could also run maybe like +5% crit chance on the staff as well instead of the flak armor damage, but I would take the damage bonus instead. Let's see. And then we have +7% toughness on warp attack kill. Fantastic. You definitely want that. Replenish 5% toughness for each 10% of peril quelled is also really good. And 10% chance to quell 10% peril on kill is also really good. These are both really good options, and I did used to come through here, but you'll find that I was a little strapped for points going through the skill tree. And there's also 2 different ways you can really run this build. For this video in particular, we're going to focus on the Smite build because that's what I personally run. But as we go through here, I'll highlight the other build paths that you can take as well. That's pretty easy to do. So these 2 are really good. Maybe you don't want to take these. But for us personally, we take this killing an elite or specialist enemy applies 3 stacks of Soul Blaze. I think this is almost necessary. This helps you clear out some hordes and do some good horde damage. And down here, we'll also we'll take Wildfire as well. So we're going to take Perilous Combustion and Wildfire, and that's going to give you some good horde clear just with your Smite build. Because what you're doing is you're focusing on specialists, and this is going to apply Soul Blaze to a lot of the surrounding enemies. And that's going to stack into later as well. So when we get to our warp charges. So then we have Brain Rupture, or we don't have Brain Rupture. This is another path that I used to take when the Empowered Psychonics was bugged on the Smite, and you got 125% bonus from Empowered Psionics on your Surge Staff. which was ridiculous. Now it no longer does that, unfortunately. But what I would do is I would run Brain Rupture and basically never use it. But this kinetic flare, fantastic, because it had the opportunity, it had the chance to one-shot Crushers. If you hit the crit and the Brain Burst, you could one-shot Crushers, and that was pretty hilarious. It wasn't really very reliable and consistent or good, but it was pretty cool to one-shot Crushers. Anyways, so we have plus 15 toughness here. Then we come down into Smite, and Smite's really what you use if you're getting ran over by a horde, or if there's just a very large group of Crushers or Maulers or something that you can't Smite down really fast. You'll whip, or you can't Surge Staff down really fast. You whip out the Smite, you'll hit them with a charge, and you're going to be giving them increased jumps by 1 and increased damage, 10% base damage for all sources. So you could, if you wanted to, you could like drop both of these perks and pick up these Quietude, and Battle Meditation would be really good as well. I really want Battle Meditation back, so I personally dropped this Smite jumps by 1, but you might also drop this plus 10% damage and then take that. Those are options, and this gives you the potential ability to keep shooting things for even longer. But I found the Smite doesn't really kill things enough to really try and get you this 10% chance to quell. But what you're trying to do there is stack up the bonuses and automatic quells on kills to let you just keep smiting forever, and that'll build into the bottom of our build as well when we get down there, finally. So, then we take minus 5% peril generation because we really want peril generation reduction. I don't think anything over here on the right is particularly useful for this build, so we stay over here on the left. So we want minus 5% peril generation. Decrease ability cooldown for your allies and your coherency by 5% on elite or specialist kill. That would honestly be really good for us since we are killing specialists a lot anyways, but what I find is that we have our ability up plenty anyways, so we don't really need to do that. We don't need that, but that would be good for our other teammates as well. That might help the teammates out, but we're taking this Wildfire because I think Soul Blaze is fun. But if you're going to go ahead and skip the Wildfire stacks, which you could do, you could skip the Perilous Combustion and grab another one of these perks and then go for this Psychonetics Aura as well and skip the Wildfire tree and instead go for that. And I think that would be a kind of interesting and good way to run it. Again, you could do cooldown reduction here as well. I don't think it is entirely necessary. But I mean, this is for your allies and this is also for your allies and coherency. So if you want to help out your team a little bit more, the Psyker build's kind of selfish. You want to help out your team a little bit more, you could run this, but we're running full selfish for full damage cannon, which is this is the glass cannon build for sure. So we have a 5% toughness damage reduction, that's fine. We have plus 5% damage to elite enemies for you and your allies and coherency. We're running this because more damage to elites. Duh. And then let's see, unlucky for some, I think this is a stupid perk. 50% toughness to all other allies and coherency if a teammate gets knocked. I mean, talk about hardly ever using that, and in the event that you use it, you might be screwed anyways. 50% toughness isn't going to really help you that much. But what is nice is 10 to 33% base toughness damage reduction based on your current peril. That's up pretty much all the time and is useful all the time. So versus this basically useless one, this is much better. So here's where our builds can split. If you are a monster and you never overcharge yourself, you don't need to take Venting Shriek. You can take Telekine Shield instead. And the Telekine Dome in particular is extremely useful for not only yourself, because you can stand out in the open and smite a lot of things, and it'll help you not be caught out in the open as a Psyker, which can happen very easily. It also helps your teammates a lot. It's very useful, especially if you have veterans or something that's trying to take on other specialists or targets and they need to be able to shoot at them and they're getting shot at. Telekine Shield, extremely important, extremely useful for your teammates. So you could definitely go down to here and then go down and do this exact same path tree. So Telekine Shield or Venting Shriek. I like Venting Shriek because it reduces 50% peril, and I'll show you in a second how I like to use it. And then, let's see, what do these other two do? I forget. Venting Shriek now decreases peril generation by 1% for each enemy hit. Stacks 25 times. Oh, I forgot about that one. Anyways, that's really useful because that's reducing our peril generation as well. And then Venting Shriek applies 1 to 6 stacks of Soul Blaze to targets hit based on your current peril. So we have a ton of peril. We use Venting Shriek. So you're zapping things, and when you're zapping things with the Surge Staff, while you're actually charging it, you can use Venting Shriek. You don't have to stop your chained attacks, which would lose you your chained up. What's it called? What's the blessing called? Won't lose you your Warp Flurry. So if you're charging up your attacks and you've got max Warp Flurry stacks, but you've hit 100% peril, just pop the Warp Flurry anyway, or the Venting Shriek, and you won't lose that chain, so you can keep charging out, but you will lose a lot of damage because of our Warp Flurry build, or Warp Charge build. But you can see where I'm going with that. You can still keep chunking out really fast charge attacks. Then we take another 5% peril regeneration nerf, which is good for us. And we take 10% health boost, and we come all the way over here for this 5% crit chance. You could honestly drop this 5% crit chance and put this point somewhere else if you wanted to too. For instance, 10% chance to quell 10% peril on kill. I took the crit chance because when you're critting with the Surge Staff, that's your opportunity to really do a lot of damage to really large high value targets that you might need to do. But not entirely necessary, but I think this gets us up to 25% crit chance if you're at max with your other ability, which is the Warp Nexus, right? Yeah, Warp Nexus, 5 to 20% crit chance based on current peril level. So if you're playing at really high peril with this, you can have like 20 to 25% crit chance bonus, which is a lot, which will probably cut down the amount of times you need to shoot an enemy, especially a large one like a Carapace or unyielding enemy 1 to 2 times, which would be really useful. Let's see. And we have 10% health. That's great. More bulk for the Psyker's great because he's already a glass cannon, so anything you can grab to help make you a little bit tougher, fantastic. Then we have Warp Rider, up to 20% damage from all sources based on your current peril. This is really useful all across the board. I mean, 20% damage, first of all, is a lot of damage. Second of all, this really helps you with your smite, because what happens when you're whipping out your smite, you're probably getting ran over by a horde. So you're going to whip out your smite a lot of things, okay? Hopefully you're at max warp charges as well. You're going to smite a lot of things. All those things are going to take 10% more damage from being affected by your smite. Then you whip out your chain axe, or your chainsword, and you start off with the heavy attacks, and you get plus 180 to 200% cleave, plus 32 to 36% damage, depending on what blessings you have, what level the blessings you have. So let's say you get 36% damage after you've smited them all and you're at max peril. You're like over 90. So you've smited them all. You have a ton of peril, so plus 20% damage, 15 to 20% damage there, plus 32% damage to 36% damage from, let's keep the numbers simple. So let's say we're at the max. So 36% damage plus 20% damage, that's plus 56% damage from your chainsword. And, you know, they might have soul blaze on them. Oh, and then you don't forget your smite bonus too. So 66% damage from your chainsword damage bonus if you got all those ramped up, which you can do really easily. You can set that up, and I'll show you in the Psykhanium in a second. So we lose peril generation, 50% radius increase for coherency aura. That's good. So you could come through here instead of going around here. So you could nix these and go through here if you want instead, if you find you want to help your team a little bit more. If you want to help your team a lot more and you don't find you ever accidentally blow yourself up, you could drop the Venting Shriek and come through the Telekine Shield, which is really useful. But I've got this build fully ran for selfishness, basically. that's what I basically have it ran for. I'm not helping out my teammates a lot, but you can definitely run more of a support role on this build, which is really fun as well. So then we have, let's see, 50% coherency aura, great. 5% toughness damage reduction, great. Quell speed increased by 30%. This is extremely important for this build. You have to quell a lot as if you hit max stacks, and 30% quell speed, you will fill that a lot. So you definitely want quell speed. 15% plus 15 toughness, fantastic. Then we have Warp Siphon, which is on killing an elite or specialist enemy, gains you a warp charge for 25 seconds. That stacks 4 times. Next combat ability spends all available warp charges to reduce the cooldown of that combat ability by 7.5%. So what that means is when we use Venting Shriek, depending on how many warp charges we have, the cooldown will be reduced by 7.5% on Venting Shriek, which is pretty helpful. So you'll have Venting Shriek up more, which means if you use Venting Shriek, that gives you more peril regeneration reduction, which stacks up to 25 times. So that's 25% peril reduction, which is fantastic. It only lasts for 5 seconds, so that kind of sucks, but it's fine. Then we have Venting Shriek applies, yeah, so you get the Venting Shriek as well from that. So this is all together, these synergize pretty well. But that would also play into your Telekine Dome, which the Telekine Dome has a pretty long recharge, and is great as well. So yeah, I can't stress that enough. Telekine Shield or Venting Shriek, depending on your playstyle, both very good, both very viable. If you find you're getting dunked on by gunners a lot, especially in level 5 difficulties or Auric missions or Maelstrom missions, Telekine Dome, very useful. Typically what I like to have is 2 Psykers, a great synergy combo, especially if you watch the last game in the gameplay that's coming up, or pinned in the comment section below, is if you have a Purge Psyker with Telekine Dome, and then you're running this build, you synergize really well for killing hordes and specials together. So that was a great setup. Where were we? Then we were down here. Minus 6% peril generation reduction for each warp charge, and the other option is replenish 30 toughness over 5 seconds on gaining warp charge. That's great, but peril generation reduction, fantastic. We need that just so we can keep smiting things longer, because the Surge Staff builds a lot of peril. So all the reductions we can get on that possible are fantastic. Increases all base damage by 4% for each warp charge. And as you can see down here, we're getting up to 6 warp charges, which is what we finally take. So 4 times 6, 6, 12, 18, 24. That's 24% damage increase from all base damage per warp charge. So I forgot about that earlier. Let's take this and add it back onto the Chainsword damage. Is that up to something like 100% damage bonus for your Chainsword, which is a pretty crazy amount of damage. You'll be just chopping through enemies. Oh, well, let's see. Interesting. Okay, so I've taken on this build, so increased base damage by 4%. I've taken Psychic Vampire, but we are running a lot of warp charge. It was a 4% chance to gain a warp charge on killing an enemy, versus the killing an enemy with Soul Blaze has 10% chance to grant you a warp charge. I've found that with this build in particular, actually running Infire Reborn is not as consistent as you'd like it to be, so I would just run this Psychic Vampire, because this gets you up to your max warp charges pretty quickly and all the time, not without just having to put Soul Blaze on things. But this is also viable, and it might work for you. I think I put this on a while ago because I wasn't finding that Infire Reborn was working that well for me, because what happens is you are smiting maybe a lot of enemies, and then you use Venting Shriek to keep your smite going, and that'll apply a lot of Soul Blaze to all of them, and that'll keep your smite going for a little while longer too, but you won't necessarily get a lot of kills from that, and it's kind of inconsistent on replenishing. But if you're running the Purge Staff build, this is fantastic, and that'll keep you at max stacks like forever. But for this build, I found that Psychic Vampire was more consistent. And then finally, we have Warp Battery, which can store up to 6 charges. And what that does, for a second there, I thought I wasn't recording, and I was like, oh my gosh. But no, we're recording. Anyways, that gets you 6 warp charges, which is plus another 8% damage and more peril generation reduction if you vent and whatever. All that stacks up together to be a nice little patty cake of damage reduction. So, for my mom, what's going on in the chat over here? Anyways, to the meat grinder. We'll enter on in here. And we'll take a look at what all these things can do. What I first want to check is how this Chainsword is against mutants just by itself, because I haven't really taken a look at that. But as you can see, the damage bonuses from you can stack on the Chainsword, or on the build itself, is pretty ridiculous. So let's say we come over here. Well, we'll just do base first. Get rid of all that. So we have the Chainsword. We'll go for a hit. That leaves him almost dead. And he's got a little bit of health left, but as you can see, we have absolutely 0 warp charges. So we'll get this bad boy charged up a little bit. All right. Let's say we've got 30 warp. Hit the. Oh, hold on. Let's say we've got a little bit of warp charge or something. Okay. Come in here, give him a whack. Yeah, he dies from a full health easily. If you have literally any stacks at all. You know, we have 6 warp charges stacked right now, which is quite a few, but it's still fine. It's still a lot. So now let's go over and check out some of their enemies. You should be, I'll go ahead and show you guys at max warp charges because you should be able to be a pretty high warp charge all the time. So the Carapace armored enemies take a lot to kill. 4 hits, but could be less depending on your charge. So let's see. Let's get ourselves up to really high. You can see just how much all this peril regeneration reduction is doing for us as well. So a lot of damage on that. And I think if you had high charge rate, it could be useful as well. You know, you're pretty much, you can average probably around 3 shots to kill a Crusher, which is pretty darn good. So 3 shots to kill a Crusher if you're using your build to its abilities. 3 shots to kill an unyielding bulwark. And this entire time also, this unyielding Ogre and Gunner is also very good to fight with the Surge Staff. This entire time, you're stagnating these guys as well, as you can see. So you're opening up his shield. We're stunning both of them. They're not going anywhere during this time. So you can jump between these two. Jump between all 3 of them if you want. Hurt a little bit. Come back out to hitting them. These guys are totally held at bay during this time as well. So while you might be worrying about, you know, you're not killing them super fast, you're holding them totally still, and your teammates are going to get in on this as well. And that they're just being totally stood still, and there's not a lot of things they can do about it. So that brings us to other characters. You know, he's, wow, down to 1, really. So if he has any damage at all on him, or any Soul Blaze or anything, he'll probably die. Let's try that again. If you hit a crit on him, he dies. And on top of this, you get these beautiful explosions of your enemies when you kill him. Or, you know, we had more, a little bit more peril, he would have died, but get this guy, he dies on a crit. Pretty much everything will die on a crit. This guy takes 2 shots on a crit, that's pretty crazy too. A lot of enemies you'll see take 2 shots. And what I'll do is I'll just give him the quickest attack, because maybe there's a lot of enemies on screen. And this does really do only 1 target. It does arc. It doesn't arc a lot though, and it's more for a stun. But what you can do is just spam these attacks. It's probably faster than charging up huge attacks. On these guys, this is what I would do for a horde. I maybe charge it up a little bit, because you have the time to charge it up probably against these guys. And once your Warp Nexus gets it going up and your charge speeds up good, then you can really do it fast. Now, what I've noticed lately is the Soul Blaze application is really inconsistent. I'm kind of interested in testing that out right now, actually. Let's see if we can check this up real quick. Like, if you're not looking at them, will it not... Like, do you have to be... Like, why is it not applying Soul Blaze to these guys? That's kind of concerning to me. It didn't used to be like that, I thought. So do you have to be, like, looking straight at them or something to apply Soul Blaze? We'll have to wait for our thing to come back up. So that might be a bug that we kind of just found, because it really makes sense. It should be all around. I suppose you have to be looking straight at them to apply the Soul Blaze and not to the side. It's kind of interesting. It's not what I thought it used to be like, but alright. So that brings us to those guys. These unarmored guys, the Chain Axe is pretty good at dealing with them as well. Or these, not these guys, but these Carapace armored individuals are kind of good with the Chain Axe as well. You get to stun them out, you can hit a big shot on them. You'll take them out. For the ads, I kind of just come in and I spam a lot. If you're seeing a large group of ads, what you can also do is you whip out the... So you got like a huge horde of these guys coming in. You'll hit them with this. You'll like halfway kill them, and then you can come in with the Chainsword. You can clear them out really easily because you get that damage bonus and the cleave bonus. Even without it, you can shoot through these guys even if you don't have time to set up the extra 10% smite. So you'll come over here and you'll smite these guys. Let's see how much damage a normal 5 warp charge smite does. It can actually kill these crappy unarmored guys. These guys probably won't kill. Let's see. Well, sure enough, it will kill them. And this is where it's really good to have that 10% chance to quell 10% peril on kill. Because, and I might need to work that into my build again, I think, because if you're doing that, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you know this is the hordes are going to be bigger than this. There'll be 20 or 30 enemies here, and if you're killing all of them, you're going to be able to prolong your smite for a while. So I think I might go add that back in. But like I said, there's other paths to go over there that you don't necessarily have to do. Let's see. So well, the idea is though you would do this. Maybe knock them all back, get some sharp warp charge attack, because you won't be killing them all the time. But you get a large amount of damage bonus from doing that, because you'll do a lot of damage. He's stuck in here. Not gonna lie. Not hard to tell. But you'll smite these guys like this, you get a big horde, and then you can come out. As you can see, you're applying Soul Blaze to a lot of guys a lot of the time, so you can definitely run that Soul Blaze setup. I find that endgame, it's less consistent than just having 40% chance on every enemy, because especially in these high horde games where there's a lot of enemies running at you, you can just use the smite, spam it at guys. You're getting a lot of kills anyways. Use the surge staff, use the smite. If there's a large horde of say these ads right here, you're gonna dumpster through them anyways. So yeah, take that as you will. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Remember, we'll have the link to the videos below of the live stream of where you can watch some of the games. I'll have timestamps on them as well. So thank you guys for watching. If you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you guys.